I am going to, thank you. We're at 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. But before I move on in the agenda, I'm going to do a few housekeeping rules. I'll turn it over to the mayor for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an announcement as we are on the roll call item of the agenda. I just wanted to formally appoint Councilwoman Cindy Lloyd to the Finance Committee. As many of you know, she is a brand new council addition, and so we welcome her. And as she dives in and on boards to her different committee assignments, and we figure out how to game that out for the rest of the term, this will be one of her assignments moving forward, and we'll talk about the other ones. But I just wanted to formally make that announcement in public. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and welcome Cindy to the Finance Committee. Okay, roll call, another housekeeping rule. Can I get a motion to reorganize the agenda and move the discussion and status update of the fiscal year 2022 audit to old business?
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved in second, moved by Councilor Harrington, seconded by Joseph Merritt. Although any discussion?
That's fine.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Perfect. Okay. Roll call. All council members are present except Councilor Politis. We have joining us Councilor Curtin and Councilor DeBeetham Brown. Thank you for joining us in the Finance Committee meeting for the month of June. On to old business. We'll have a discussion and update regarding the fiscal year 2022 audit. I think that's Acting Director Sharon Gentle Harris. She sent out an audit request list. India, if we can present that for the public, and Sharon, if I can ask that you provide the update and then go through the work plan item by item of where we are, what's due for July, provide the status update, and then after you do July's deadline of July 1, if we can go to August 1 deadline and talk about where we are in those processes and if you foresee us hitting those deadlines so that we can get moving on the audit. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you for your update.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And India, are you able to share the screen?
She's having some computer issues for a minute, so we can just recess for like 30 seconds, then we'll give her enough time to present.
Okay.
What am I presenting?
The work plan that you printed out. Perfect.
And while India's bringing it up, I could just mention this is an audit log that was provided to us from our external auditors, CLA. And it lists all the various items that they would need to complete our audit. And this was a reset date. Once we missed the date last year, this was the new reset date was agreed upon between us, them, and the former town manager. So these are the new dates. As you can see, there's various sections, and it has a requested date. Some are 8/1, some are 7/1, some are 7/15 are the dates. When you see the items highlighted in green, it means those items are completed. So like, for instance, all of section 1, number 1 statistical sections, there's various tables that are due for that. And all those tables are due August 1. So some are completed, some are in progress, and others we will get to. But since they are not due until August 1st, we've kind of tabled that until we've gotten all the July 1st one out. So in terms of section 1, we are pretty good with that. Most of those are due August 1st. Items 3 and 4, those are due July 1st. Those are completed. Item 5, that is to be done by CLA, and that's usually done at the end of the audit. So when it's clear, meaning the due date isn't here yet, or CLA will be providing that, or we haven't gotten to it. Then we go to under the trial balance number 6 and 7. Those are the two critical pieces that are due July 1st. And that is due based on our reconciliation. 99% of the town's cash has been reconciled. The June was reconciled. The auditors are just reviewing it to finalize that. So that's almost at the tail end. So I don't foresee any issues in having that done to meet the July 1st deadline. So that's the key piece that the auditors need. So we are at the tail end, and we are very confident that we'll be there since our reconciliations are done, and we're just wrapping it up and making notes on it to provide to the auditors. Then we get to the footnotes. As you see, some are completed. The landfill, others, CLA will provide, that's item 9. Item 10 and 11, that's only if there's any audits. Nancy and I and the auditors will just review it to see if there's any update to the footnotes. And those are just statements that are made, and to see if any updates are needed to that. So that's not an issue to have completed for on the July 1st date. The same thing with item 14. To see if there was any new, we just have to answer yes, no, and what that is. Item 13 is in progress. A lot of that detail was done by Nancy to meet last year's deadline. The auditors think most of what we needed is completed, and they're just going through their due diligence to review and see if anything else needs to be done for that. So there's no issue in getting item 13 also to meet the July 1st deadline. 15, well, I mentioned that that's covered. 16 is also to see if there's any update to that wording. So, wordsmithing, that's not difficult. So there's not an issue in meeting those. 17 is completed. Now so most of those are the July 1st deadline. When you go into other audit support for draft, 18, 19, 20, 21, those are all completed. 22 and 23, those are almost completed, because once the auditors sign off on 6 and 7, it's just a matter of running our munis report for those two items on the revenue pieces for 22 and 23. So again, that will not be an issue. 24, 25 is done. 26, that's a discussion Nancy and I will have just to see if there was anything on allocations. So that's easy to answer. 27, we've been working with the Board of Ed, the revenue, the expenditures, we went through that reconciliation. They were still working on some of the balance sheet items. They will provide that. They promised to provide that to us by this Friday. They gave us 2 of them over last weekend. The auditors are reviewing those, and any others will come to us on Friday. And we hope once we get that, that wouldn't be an issue. That's the only thing that's really in question right now to meet the deadline. Because if everything comes in good, we are good to go with that. Because that's the other big piece that the auditor is waiting for. 28, 29, those are completed. 30 to 32, again, that's related to the capital or the fixed asset information that Nancy had worked on. The auditors are reviewing those to make sure that everything is all in good order. 33, that's done. 34, the leases, GASB leases. I found out that before Kerry left, they had engaged our external auditor, CLA, to work on this for us. So that's a project in of itself. It's a new requirement by GASB, which can be very complicated. So they're taking that to task, and we'll work on that. So that's on, even as a July 1st deadline, they will be the ones working on that for us. 35 is completed. 36 and 37, the auditors have done their piece. I am just going through it right now and these are on our grants. The state give us certain grants. They list the amounts that were given, and we need to report what accounts those grants were in and did we spend it or not. Because some of the grants, if we don't spend it, we have to return some of the money. So we're going through and finalizing which grants and confirm was those grants spent. So we only have a few more items to review on that. The Board of Ed had some of them where it's difficult to know exactly where it was spent. So they have to confirm with us that the funds were spent and how much, and then that will be reported back to the state. And that I'm working on. So that's almost there. Under audit support for fund work, all the July dates, those items are completed, except for 49, which is listed as in progress. That one is completed, so I'll update 49, update list of banking accounts, that's done. 50, I've asked Nancy to take a look at that to see if there's, if she knows if that's done or not, and if not, where to find that information. So all of that covers all the July 1st deadline. So we will have the July 1st deadline met. And like I said, the only question is on the BOE reconciliation, because we don't know what we'll get on Friday. But we're clearing out everything else. So once we get that, we could go full force into completing that item. And that's my report on where we are for now for all the different pieces. And I'll turn it back over to you if there's any questions.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. I appreciate you going through this work plan for the members of the committee and the public. I have one question. When we complete all these items, my first question is, once we complete all of these items, what is the timeline for the auditors to begin the groundwork, and when do they estimate the completion of the audit?
Right now, they're still on the original estimated that was provided for us on the onset, where once they've gotten everything, they should have it completed to us by the end of September. That date has not changed. They have not given us a new date from that. I sent our external auditors an email to say, once you've gotten all the deliverables for July 1st, what's the next step? Will they just be working on it? Will they schedule a field audit where they come over and examine certain things? So I'm waiting to hear back from them once the next step after they've gotten this. But we'll provide them the July 1st, the August 1st, and July 15th, they will be working on it. And like all other audits, once they started going through it, there will be additional questions. There will be requests for more information. So we will be on the ready to pull anything that they need, any journal entries, any other detail that they need additional support for. We'll provide those to them as they're going through the whole process. We don't know what that is or how much it is, and they don't even know until they're actually examining all the detail that we'll provide them on July 1st. But we'll be on the ready to give them all the additional information then. But as of the deadline, they have not changed the September date. Once they get the July 1st, I think that will be the most meaningful time that they may say, yes, we can do the September. Will it be earlier? Will it be later? So not until they get the July deliverables do I think they will make any adjustment to the estimated end of September completion date.
Okay, my second question is, I noticed that we did hire the audit consultants. How are they working out? I see a few items on here on the work plan that has assigned to them. And I see like number 11, I see maybe number 13. It's both Nancy and the audit consultant, 22, 23, 30, 31, 32, 36, 37. So there's a number of items that they need to get to you. And I know we brought extra hands on to help. Are they working out? Do you think it's helpful to you? And do you think that we will get these pending items and the outstanding items done before next week?
Yes, as I mentioned, when we were looking at these and the status of them, regardless of who was working on it, the deliverables still stand. And like 6 and 7, I will say they are working out very well. I am extremely pleased that we came across them and they were chosen. as the ones to come. They ask a lot of great questions, a lot of suggestions, and they have a lot of information that could make our life easier, even once we get through this audit. They're also keeping an eye out on what we need to get ourselves situated for the fiscal 23 audit. And I'm very pleased with how they work out. We are working very well together. And they're
Perfect.
very knowledgeable in terms of what needs to get done, when it needs to get done. Their knowledge of Munis is above par, and I'm also awesomely excited about that.
Perfect. So we are on track for September. By being on track for the final product of September, if the council is able to vote for it at the end of the September meeting, the final audit for last year, when do you expect us to go out to the market for the library project?
Once we're completed with the audit, or even when before we get completed to the audit completed, we will talk to our bond advisor to see when is the most opportune time to then go to the market for that. But as I mentioned, for our next finance subcommittee meeting in July, we will have a more meaningful date to that September, because the auditors would have gotten the July 1st information, and they could concretely, because they could only be the ones to let us know, will that end of September date hold, or does it need to be revised? So at our next finance subcommittee meeting, if there's any update to the end of September, we will definitely have something better to say at that point. And we will speak to the bond advisor with that update and see when is the most opportune time to do that. What do we need to prepare to do that? What's the time frame to go forward with that?
Okay. My last question before I turn it over to open it up for members of the committee is, and this may be more of a statement, I'm more interested, and I think I was talking to a few members, of maybe just having a special finance committee meeting, check in next week sometime, just to make sure that all of the pending items that we see here on this work plan maybe you can present an updated one so that we see that it's completed, so that we stay on track for September and that we have no delays. In the instance in where there are delays, as the committee, maybe we can provide some support or move some barriers for you. So I am interested, I hope to work with the members of the committee and the council clerk to see if there's a possibility for us to have a quick check-in special meeting of the finance committee next week to discuss the items that are currently pending, to make sure that they go from pending to complete, so that we can turn the necessary information over to the auditors. Councilor Merritt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious if the last meeting, we had the board here and they were talking about all the problems of our getting on the same platform or whatever it was. I wonder if that's happened, and are we not worrying about that right now? And we're reconciling without going through that hassle. Is that a fair statement?
At this time, anything with Munis and being on the same platform is shelved, because
Okay.
that will not help us in meeting
No, that
the
makes sense.
deadline.
Okay, I was
So
curious
that will
about
not help us at this point,
Good.
because it's a big process for that.
Yes, that's good.
Well, I want to be clear. It's not off the table yet, but we're just prioritizing the audit and making sure that the audit can complete. We are still, the plan is to, I hope that for us to still have the Board of Education on the same plan. If they decide not to do that, then they should refund us all of our money that we spent on trainings and et cetera. So I get the priority right now is, and I agree, making sure that this fiscal year audit, last fiscal year audit is complete, and that we start to put the steps and the processes in place so that we can start for this year's audit. But I think it is important for the Board of Education to get on the same page and on the same financial.
Okay, I was just
tracks
interested.
with
It
us.
shouldn't interfere with the audit.
Exactly.
Councilor Harrington.
So my question refers to, we're focusing on completing the items for 7-1, and then we have others that are requested to be completed for 8-1. So if we complete 7-1 and complete 8-1, is it pretty much understood that the September date won't be impacted?
That's my understanding. And as I had mentioned, once we give them the 7-1, based on everything being clean to the auditors, they're provided that they will complete it by the end of September. If there's any hiccups or any questions in the information that's provided in the 7-1, I think it's only at that time they can let us know if that date will be provided. So I can't foresee what that will be yet until we've given them our July. We're making
Right.
sure that the data is as clean as possible, so there will be no delays. But then it's auditors have to let us know once we give them the information on July 1st to let us know. How soon after July
Before
1st will they be able to let us know if the end of September will be revised or not?
Right.
I can't foresee what their answer will be. We're hoping it won't change.
Thank you.
Is there any additional questions? Is there any additional questions from members of the committee or councilors that are visiting the committee regarding this topic? Again, is there any questions from members of the committee or other councilors visiting committee? Councilor Mayor.
I'd like to make a comment. I think you guys have done a really good job in getting on top of this and deserve a lot of credit for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mayor. I echo those comments, and we will continue to track this as a committee to make sure that it is project managed. And I think the town staff is doing a great job at project managing this. We have our tracker, we have who's responsible for it, we have our deliverables. And I am proud of the work that we're doing regarding this. And I've been a firm believer of, when you have issues, you put a plan in place and you try to work towards solving those issues and then putting processes in place to ensure that things like this doesn't happen again. And I think we're on the right track to do that. Is there any additional questions related to the update and status regarding the audit from any members of the committee or other councilors? Councilor
I'm
Merritt.
wondering, we're a year behind, so are we going to go right into the next year's audit? Right after September? I would think that we need to process that pretty quickly so we don't end up so late next year.
I think the update that was provided and I think the director could correct me if I'm wrong, the co-directors can correct me if I'm wrong. The consultants, the auditor consultants who are in to help support us for the previous year's audit. And then once that's complete, they will help us with these staff supplement to complete this year's of audit so that we hopefully aren't late. Is that correct, Sharon or Nancy?
That is correct. They are prepared to also help us get in the fiscal 23 one done on time. And as we're going through fiscal 22, they're looking at and putting things in place to make sure everything will work through for 23. So we will be working in tandem in getting 23 off the ground.
Which is a good sign, particularly when the rating agencies come and look, because what it shows is that we're putting corrective action plans in place and that we are aware of the situation and we're working to mitigate things like this that are happening to us from last year's audit so it doesn't move forward. So I'm proud of the work of this committee, the council, and the town staff as it relates to putting stopgaps in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And so I continue to look to, as the chair of this committee, to monitor and provide oversight and provide any supplemental support that you all need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Seeing no additional hands related to the audit, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, and I'm going to ask for a motion to table the discussion of possible action regarding funding requests for Black Girl Achieve and the Greater Hartford Youth program. Over the last couple of days, there's been a number of suggestions from members of the council as it relates to requests like this. And at our next finance committee meeting, we will be discussing a protocol around this. There's also been some requests for support for the health district as it relates to vaccines. And I'm going to turn that over to Phil to provide an update on that as it relates to that before we get but before I turn it over to him to address that, I want to get a motion
So moved.
for those two items to be tabled.
Table.
It's been properly moved in second by Councilor Merritt, seconded by Councilor Lloyd. And this is the discussion phase of these two items being tabled. And so I'm going to, as I mentioned, there's been some discussions around creating a policy around requests like this. And so some members of the committee has some ideas. And so we will put that on our next finance agenda. And I know there's been some also concerns about the appropriateness of where it should be in the committee. If there's an instance where this committee discuss a policy or procedure related to financial requests and it needs input from another committee, we will have the jurisdiction to refer it to that appropriate committee before moving it to council and approval. So Phil, I'm going to turn it over to you to provide an update as it relates to the request that we received for the additional vaccines, money for additional vaccines. Phil, you're on mute. You're still on mute. Perfect, you're off.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there are a number of different requests that the council has approved in the past prior to my return. And there've been some that have surfaced recently, really all for good causes, but we have obviously not budgeted for these for the coming fiscal year, which starts July 1st. And some of them relate also to the current fiscal year, which expires June 30th. But I think the central issue here is if we're going to entertain these types of requests going forward, we need to go ahead and have some form of a procedure. Obviously, the town council contingency is an arm of the town council. And it would be up to the town council to adopt policies, procedures, and similar types of controls and procedures as we move forward. There are a lot of good causes out there. I think we need to look broader at what we're going to be doing. It has been suggested in several quarters that perhaps in the forthcoming budget, in the 24-25 budget, that we look at putting a specific budget item in. Joe Merritt has indicated that in years past, there was a certain amount of money that was provided to the Parks and Recreation Committee to allocate to community activities of various kinds. We may want to consider putting a cap on requests. We may want to consider setting up an advisory committee that reviews applications or proposals and recommends funding for those. So I think all of these are good points to look at as we move ahead to discuss some form of a procedure, at least for the council. Now, the council, of course, has to agree to this. There may be emergency appropriations that don't go through that process, so there may need to be an exception to policy for special things. I know storms in some cases, hurricanes we've had in the past, and other things that may pop up that really don't need to be as closely looked at. They're very reasonable, and everybody agrees that they would be the type of thing that we'd probably want to fund out of the council's contingency. But again, it's a council contingency. The council controls the reins on it. And I'm recommending, as I've indicated, that we set up a discussion process to come up with a policy that the council can agree on, so that when they do decide to fund something, it's an orderly process that meets the financial requirements and capabilities of the town. So that's basically my comments at the moment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I totally agree. And there was some great suggestions over the course of the last couple of days via email. Obviously, because of the open meeting laws, we could not act upon it or make any decisions. And so hopefully, Phil, you have seen those requests and you would take those into consideration as the staff begins to give this committee a draft. But if it's prudent and in order, is it possible for us to kind of get a ledger of the last maybe 3 to 5 years of the council contingency to see what type of categories and requests came in and the type of monies that we were spending from council contingency. So that kind of help us develop this policy and kind of get our juices flowing based on the type of requests that have come in. Is that in order?
Absolutely. That would be the research that we could start to pull together for future discussions on the types of applications or requests that you might entertain. Yes.
Perfect. I appreciate that. That was in the discussion phases. I just want to be clear for the audience. That was this discussion that was going on was the discussion of the tabling of the Black Girl Achieves programs and the Greater Hartford Youth Program requests. And we're still under those categories to table those two items. I do see a hand, Councilor DeBeetham Brown.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chair. I am, as I stated previously, I'm very much in favor of us coming up with a policy, realizing that our contingency fund is for emergencies or unexpected financial need. And I think we have to be very careful and very intentional on how we go about making those decisions, right? We want to make sure that we are using taxpayers' funds in the best way possible to meet the needs of our residents, right? So I know that you talked a little bit about maybe the vaccine and providing some support for that for our underinsured and our uninsured. And I think that's important. We can say that everything that comes before us as a council is extremely important, but we just have to be very intentional because we do have to give an account to our residents on how those funds are spent. So as I stated in our email conversation, I am very much open and appreciative of the fact that we're going to come up with policies and procedures for how we're going to spend this money. I would also be remiss if I didn't say that we have to have an even hand, right? So if Councilor McCleary gets $10 and Councilor Lloyd wants $10, we have to make sure that we are looking at both of them equally. So I think the policy and the procedure will definitely help us making these decisions and even probably taking the whole decision-making process outside of the council. And then for the council to vote on whatever decision a committee makes would probably also take the politics out of it as well. And looking at the emergency and or the need. So I'm looking forward to looking over the draft and as a council coming up with a policy that's going to benefit our residents. Thank you so very much for the time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussions? Seeing none I'm gonna call the question. All in favor of tabling the Black Girl Achieves programs and the Greater Hartford Youth Program, signal by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed have the same right. Seeing none, great. Those items are tabled. The next item on the agenda is the review and discussion and recommendation of authorization for the use of the fiscal year 2022 and 2023 and fiscal year 2023-24 contingencies and unanticipated budget expenditures. I think we're going to keep this one on because I think it's going to address the summer bridge program. So I'm going to turn it over to Nancy and then we'll hear your report related to this item and then maybe from Phil and then have a discussion as a committee.
Thank you, Counselor. As interim town manager Shank said, the town council has always approved as a matter of practice expenditures out of its council contingency. So there are several requests to use the contingency. The one that I've brought before you for the current fiscal year is to authorize up to $30,000 to retain the services of a search consulting firm to assist in recruiting town manager candidates. There is sufficient money in the council contingency to cover this expenditure, and I have accounted for it in the year-end projections. So if we could maybe take care of that one first.
Or do you mind talking about item number
Sure.
3 for 2023? Because the other two items in 2023, 2024 are tabled.
Correct.
And so it would just be the 1754. Can you talk about that in?
Sure. There is for the summer bridge program, the employment program for Bloomfield youth that starts in July. There's been a request to fund Capital Workforce Partners to implement and manage the program this summer, and that would be out of the 2023-24 contingency for $17,500.
Oh, that wouldn't be out of the current.
That would be added next year.
That would be out of next year, but I think I want to turn it over to Councilor Harrington because I think he was the architect of this program, but I think the number has decreased, so.
What's left after the 30,000 in this year's council contingency?
$18,260.
Yeah, can we
But
put,
it's a next year program.
it's a next year appropriation, so you can't use next year up, you,
Oh, we've already
I'm
put
told
it
you
in.
cannot use next year's appropriate.
Right, the timing of the program would not allow it to be used out of this year's contingency.
Oh.
Quick question. I have a question. I know for plenty of years we've had, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Council Curtin, and this is statement or question is by no means an attack on anyone or any program. Just want to preference that. But I know for year to year, we set up a fund for the STEM program. I know when I got on council in 2017, 2018, there was money, like a STEM program account where money was in it. Is it prudent for the finance department to set up a similar account for the Summer Bridge program, since that is an ongoing program? And if monies are put in there allocated to that program each year, so that we don't have to keep coming back, or the program, whether I'm here or Councilor Harrington is here, if future councils see that program as viable, there's a budget account similar to the STEM program on the councils, on the town side, to keep supporting that program year after year. Because I think it went 1 year, it went to it from a pilot program. It was very successful. And now we're doing it again this year. And then next year, we're going to probably potentially have the same problem. So we can create a fund in our accounts to make sure that money is placed in there. And then when we see that during the budgetary process, we can allocate the appropriate dollars to it.
I think there's a few distinctions. The first would be the STEM, which preceded my tenure, is the co-interim finance director, was town programs. The Summer Bridge program is not a town program. And even last year, the town was only a pass-through. We did not manage it was not a town program. And therein lies the biggest issue.
All right, thank you. But I'll turn it over to Councilor Harrington to talk about the actual requests. Turn your mic on.
So what I wanted to mention was that last year's appropriation of 17.5 to Capital Workforce Partners, they waived in our favor. They did not ask the town for those dollars. I just found out that they will not charge us 17.5 for this year's, but there's a few changes in the sense that Goodwin will do 4 days of the program, and the last day will be housed at Bloomfield High School. So there'll be Fridays for 7 weeks. So in that respect, we'll have to take care of whatever related expenses there are, not in terms of paying for the facility, but management, lunches, and workshops. So I don't believe that it would equate to 17.5. I believe that we could probably work with 10. We were fortunate in the sense that Capital Workforce Partners decided not to further charge us this year. And they are also providing a certification for the youth participating on those Fridays for a community, what is it called? Oh my goodness, I would do this. It's a certification, customer service certification. They wanted to have a hand in some of the training. So they are going to be providing that service on Fridays, but we just needed to have some other dollars available for their lunches and for the workshop.
And it would still go to Capital Workforce Partners? Where
No,
would that $10,000
Capital
go?
Workforce Partners would not be engaged any
Who-
further outside of they are going to manage that.
Who gets the
that
money
group.
is really what I'm asking.
Okay. Well,
Is it the DOE?
No.
So like, so I think her question is like, if you're gonna do workshops for the 4 days at Capital Workforce, there's a pot of money for that. And in this request of the 10,000 is to supplement is it the 6 weeks for the
7 weeks.
7 weeks for the workshops, the food, the
Right.
whatever else?
Right.
Who's managing that? Who's the agent, the financial agent for that program?
Who's
Because they're
running
gonna
that
bill us.
so
Who's
we
running that?
we can pay them.
Can we just, maybe you just got to do some more research and maybe you could get back to us. So maybe my recommendation as the chair would be, if this is something that the committee sees fit, we assign up to a certain amount of money or leave this here. And then when you find out that information, you can work with the town staff and the finance department to figure out who's the agent is, because what I don't want to do is for us to get for us not to do this right here, to do this right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, do this right now, and then the program happens, and then we don't allocate any money, and then we're getting bills, like POs or invoices from a agent that we didn't know and we assign money? Or can we wait, since this is a program that's happening next year, to next fiscal year, and then in the July finance committee meeting, bring this back up?
Or if we know by Monday, because I would be asking at least for the 22-23 to move that forward to Monday's council meeting.
Yeah,
If you can let
It has
us
to be
know.
a council meeting.
Yeah, so let's move it to
So-
the council meeting.
So
and then-
maybe if Counselor Harrington, you could
Yes.
find out by Monday, and then we can make the appropriate adjustment if
Okay.
we need be for the council meeting.
Perfect.
Would
All
that,
right,
is that something that would be
Yes.
workable? Okay.
Mhm.
I see a question from Councilor DeBeetham Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to bring some clarity because I know that we talked about this, STEM money. That money, that pot of money does go to our Bloomfield students, but please also be mindful that that pot of money was fundraised money. That money's not coming from the town or from taxpayers. So I just wanted to make that clear so that we have it on record. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, I understand. I wasn't attacking the program. I was just using it as an example. So I wanted to be clear. I just was,
What money are we talking?
I think we was talking about the STEM. I was just
Oh,
using it
okay.
as an
All right.
example where there was a program that we established. There was like fundraising and some tax dollars put in there. I know something like $250,000, and then they used to raise money for at the mayor's ball. I was just using it as an example for this program. I wasn't attacking it. I wasn't saying that it was taxpayer dollars. Let's just stop being so defensive and just focus on like the substance of trying to do it.
Mr.
So
Chair,
thank you. We will move on.
Mr. Chair,
we
I
will
wasn't
move
being
on. You're
defensive.
Out
I
of
was just-
order. You're out of order, Councilor DeBeetham Brown. We're going
Mr.
to
Chair,
move on from this discussion. Thank you. So is there any other questions related to the capital workforce partners and the $30,000 from council contingency? If not, is there a motion to move this to
I
council?
move that we put this to council.
It's been moved and seconded
30,000
by,
And the, whatever the up.
Yep.
10,000 or whatever.
yep, the 10,000. Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Merritt, seconded by Councilor and Cindy Loy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. This is moved to council unanimously. The next agenda item is the discussion regarding the May 2023 financials. Nancy or Sharon?
That would be me. Thank you, Counselor Nancy Haynes, co-interim finance director again. We actually have a better picture of the year end than I presented to you last month. We're looking to actually have our expenditures, our revenues increase to have a $1.6 million surplus over what was budgeted, not taking into account the 2.75 million for fund balance, and savings in the expenditures totaling $2.1 million, which would leave a need to draw from the fund balance $1.283 million. I think last month it was close to $1.5 million. So it's improved since then. I'm going to go over a few of the highlights and the revenues. Our tax collections are looking very good. Our current year levy is at 100%, which is slightly behind the same period for last year, which was at 100.7%. I did want to note that although our collections are good, I have accommodated for in the year-end projections, the final payment of the settlement on the solar, all the solar companies, that tax assessment that was approved. So there's $339,000 that would be taken against the prior year collections line. But I have accommodated for that, and that would be the final year of that payment for that settlement agreement. We've gotten all the state education grants. I'm very pleased to report that the actions that you took several months ago regarding investments have really generated quite a good news for the town. And that we are really soaring when it comes to the amount of money that we are getting on our return for investments. The budget was $608,000 is where we are. We only budgeted 100% for it. I mean, $100,000 for interest on investments. So I want to thank you on behalf of the finance department for acting on that when my colleague Sharon Gentles Harris brought that to your attention, and that we are encouraged and expect another $100,000 or more to come in this month as it results mostly from transferring the money into the STIF account. I'm not going to go over some of the things that we are not going to see that we've been talking about the last few months on the bond premiums and the indirect cost allocation. I will tell you that yet again, the building the building permits continue to be very active in town, and that's reflected in the revenues. We believe we're going to hit $1.5 million for this year. As you know, we've budgeted, or maybe you don't remember, but that we were very aggressive in our budgeting for next year, also at $1.5 million. So we continue to do very well there. And again, the real estate conveyance tax continues based on the strong housing market, continues to exceed our expectations. Now, on the expenditure side, we're doing quite well in expenditures too. Through the month of May, we're at 88.7% of our expenditures, and last year we were at 85.4% for the same time period. This does include almost $1 million that are still in encumbrances. We have salary savings, quite a bit of salary savings when we went through the budget and adopted the budget back at the end of April, beginning of May. There were several positions that were frozen for next year, but because they were vacant, we were able to achieve the savings for this year as well. And it'll come to no one's surprise that it continues to be difficult to find people and find qualified people to fill vacancies, not only for the town of Bloomfield. A lot of other municipalities are feeling the same way as our companies in the private sector. It's a full employment economy, and that's reflected here in Bloomfield as well. So we're also have savings in the debt service account. We had originally anticipated selling bonds for the library and Philly Park projects in fiscal year 23. Obviously, we're not going to be doing that until hopefully later in the calendar year. As an aside, we're expecting to start construction. Should the bids come in good for Philly Park, for the libraries, they took about 6 packages today. The rest of the bid packages are due next Tuesday. And depending on where they come in, they're looking at a August 9th start date for that. The bids open for Philly Park on July 20th. So it looks like we'll be starting and mobilizing for that project as well, probably sometime in September. But that's an aside to why we didn't sell bonds in fiscal year 2023. Obviously, there's funds that are allocated in the finance department for that audit assistance, which has been of a great assistance. And again, I want to thank this committee for being so diligent and encouraging us and supporting the finance department to be able to get some resources. Those are paying dividends as well. We will need additional funds for information technology for their unanticipated expenses related to contracted services, as well as to cover some of their shortfalls in payrolls and retirements. And then we're looking for additional funds for operating transfers out, which we'll talk about when we get to the fourth quarter. So actually, we're in good shape financially. I think we're going to end the fiscal year. I do want to say maybe I was a little conservative when I did these projections. I mean, since the time I did them, I'm aware of a few things that we thought were going to materialize that aren't going to. I mean, it's not a lot of money right now, maybe $50,000, but I feel very enthusiastic about the projections that I've given you. And I do believe that we're probably only going to have to tap our $2.75 million fund balance. We might probably will only need to take $1.28 million of that. And because I know I'm going to be asked where that will leave us for next year is the percentage fund balance. Is that was, you got your hand up? That would bring us to about 16.2% of unassigned fund balance. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, co-director. I'm very excited because I think in the few months ago, I was reading these documents and I caught the recommendation about the accounts and how our interest on our liquidity wasn't working for us. The banks wasn't working for us. And so that move to move it from certain banks to the STIF fund at the state treasurer's office was perfect because I think they have one of the highest rates in the market right now. And I think that is showing good, smart public policy, and we're getting the fruits of we're getting the fruits of our rewards for doing that, and the taxpayers are benefiting from that. So I'm very excited to see that. Councilman Mayor, you have any additional questions?
I was just going to ask, this estimated unassigned fund balance, June 30th, 2023 of 16,998,308. Does that reflect all these improvements?
Yes.
So was that number different?
Last month it was 16,804,018.
Oh, so it's gained over
Yes.
almost 200,000. Good.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Any additional comments? I can't see hands. That's why we need to update technology. I don't see any additional hands. Seeing no additional hands, we're going to move to the discussion and possible action regarding fourth quarter transfers. I'm gonna turn that over to Nancy.
Thank you again, Nancy Haynes, co-interim finance director. I have several fourth quarter transfers to present to you. The council is authorized by the town charter to transfer unencumbered funds within the general fund budget only in the fourth quarter. You approved some last month. I have several more for you. The first one is the remaining balance for the lot slip match for the School Street project. We moved $150,000 out of one project in CIP into that project last month. I had advised that there was probably going to need more money. We did get an updated quote from the engineering firm who was preparing that, and we need an additional $30,000 to cover that. The second request is for last summer's summer bridge program. As you recall, the town fronted the money for that project. We do feel confident, although it's slow moving, that we will receive the $100,000 from the state, but that leaves a slight balance of 13,060 or 80. $13,080 that would have to be covered. So that would be our second request. The town manager also committed funds out of his contingency, previous town manager, by the way, for the Trees for Bloomfield project. And I talked briefly about the staffing shortage in information technology. And then the last request that I've asked Director of Public Works, Dan Carter, to come and talk about is a request to replace an existing plow truck. So if you'll indulge Director Carter for a few minutes, and he can talk to you about the request for the plow truck.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. The request for the transfer for the plow truck is to replace a 2001 truck that we currently have with 91,000 miles. It has numerous mechanical problems. We requested the funds as part of fiscal year 24 budget in the capital program. At that, it was not funded as part of the capital program for fiscal year 24. However, we had available funds to supplement a balance in the capital vehicle replacement. The need to replace this truck is we have 15 frontline plow trucks. A desirable life cycle is 10 to 12 years. If we buy one per year, we're on a 15-year replacement cycle. We're replacing almost a 23-year-old truck right now. So I think it's critical that we at least fund the replacement of one truck per year. It doesn't get us to our 10 to 12-year replacement cycle, but it gets us closer to a 15-year, and it's an improvement. So that's the request that we're putting in this evening.
Great.
And I will add
Yep.
that the funds for that Public Works is identified in their current budget. And even then, I believe they're coming a little bit lower than what we projected last month as well. So,
Mhm.
and it's only a portion. This will supplement the existing funds in the vehicle fund. I don't recall off the top of my head how much a plow truck costs. A bit.
265.
Okay, $265,000, 148.
148.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that, given that your variance for the year is $793,000. So you're giving quite a bit of money back. Yeah, and I think that is a test to your leadership, and also that we had a very mild winter and we didn't do probably a lot of overtime and material costs. And so anything, I've always been a proponent of, like, if you want the heartbeat of a community, you look at its Public Works Department. If you want people to be able to get to work when it snows, who's out there doing it? The Public Works Department. When you want great parks, you want great sidewalks, et cetera, who's doing that work? Public Works. So if it's a request to help make sure your department is moving smoothly and have the resources that they need, and you have a significant amount of variance from the year, why not? But Nancy, I have a question for you related to the Trees for Bloomfield. It's my understanding that they have a urban forest grant, and they also raise some money, and it's somewhere like $4,000 left from the urban forest grant, and this money was not used, and so the state has told the Trees for Bloomfield group that they can use the money for this year, for next year, essentially. As they were fundraising, Stanley made a commitment to them of, if I'm not mistaken, $6,000, which would take their total budget to $10,400 for next year. I don't see the other like $2,800 to make it even to like $6,000. Are we planning on getting the additional monies for the $6,000 in next year's budget to support the $10,000 or what?
There's already been expenditures for Trees for Bloomfield out of the town manager's contingency. So the amount that I'm asking you for, and there's a slight balance that's already in there, this just covers the difference.
Okay, so there were some expenditures that was from the $6,000 that Stanley
Yes,
deduct, and so this is the remaining of the
Yes.
full. Okay, perfect, and they're happy with that? The,
It's
Good.
the
Okay,
$6,000 that they were promised. Yes,
Perfect.
and it is going to be supplemented, obviously, by the urban
perfect.
forest
Thank you.
grant
That,
and
I
some of their other
think I received a
fundraising.
few emails and that clarifies that, so I appreciate that. Any other discussion, any other hands online? If not, Mr. Council Merritt.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to understand, was this this amount originally in the budget, and it was this part of the part we swept out, or is, yeah, okay, so that would make me completely agreeable to it, because we got rather brutal in that procedure, so
Mhm.
I would move all these items.
It's been moved by Councilor Merritt to move these fourth quarter transfer to the full council as outlined in the packet. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Harrington. Any discussion? Again, any discussion? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. If it's unanimous, it will go to the next council meeting. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? If it is, you have, or online? Okay, is there any additional members of the public that would like to speak? You can use the indicator at the bottom of the screen to raise your hand, your virtual hand. If not, again, anyone in the room would like to speak during public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the May 15th Finance Committee minutes. It's been moved by Councilor Merritt, seconded by Deputy Mayor Harrington. I've been calling him Counselor all night. I got to get used to Deputy Mayor. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Harrington. It's been properly moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, unanimously approved. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn moved by Deputy Mayor Harrington. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Cindy Lloyd. All in favor, second by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Thank you to the staff. Good job. We'll be in touch about a meeting next week. Thank you.